Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. Our guest today is Rabbi Jason Strauss, the Rabbi of Congregation Kadima Toras Moshe in Brighton, Massachusetts, and also a Judaic Studies teacher at Maimonides School in Brookline, Massachusetts. Hello, Rabbi. Thank you for being with us.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me.
Our Parsha this week is Truma, and in this Parsha, the people are called upon to contribute 13 materials, out of which God says to Moses, "They shall make for me a sanctuary, and I shall dwell amidst them." Moshe is given detailed instructions on how to construct this dwelling for God so that it would be really and readily dismantled and transported as the people journey in the desert. In the sanctuary's inner chamber was the ark containing the tablets engraved with the 10 Commandments. In the outer chamber stood the 7-branched menorah and the table upon which the showbread was arranged. The second pasuk of this parsha says, "Daber al bnei Yisrael v'yikchu li truma me'et kol ish asher yidvenu libo tikchu et trumati." Speak to the children of Israel and have them take for me an offering from every person whose heart inspires him to generosity. You shall take my offering. So, Rabbi, me'et kol ish asher yidvenu libo. How much are we talking about?
Well, at first glance, it seems like it's really up to the person how much they give. That there's a requirement that each individual gives something. But as long as but it's up to them how much they choose to give. But I was very interested in the phrase "Asher Yidvenu Libo," because as far as I know, I think it's the first time that this phrase of Nedivut Lev, of this kind of generosity that comes from an inner motivation, it's the first time that it appears in the Torah. So I looked at some of the translations, the traditional translations in Aramaic, and how they understood this phrase. And something stuck out, which is that Targum Yonatan ben Uziel translates it as that a person is supposed to give whatever is supposed to give from their own personal motivation, their own generosity, and not by force, which means that they're not required to give; they have to be self-motivated to give.
Okay,
which is very interesting.
This is not about this specific amount. So you give as much as you want, but you also have to be generous. So it has to be something that you feel comfortable giving, or
well, even more than that, it sounds like you're not actually required to give it unless you actually want to. So if you really didn't want to give anything, you would give nothing. That's what it seems like.
Okay,
from
good,
that
good for
translation.
us. So why would people even consider giving?
So why would they? Well, that's an interesting question. So you might think, okay, well, there are other cases where we donate things to an institution in which we're very invested if we really believe in it, particularly charities. So you might compare it to a charity or to a synagogue. When you to a shul, you give money to your Beit Knesset to make sure that it's beautiful and that it's built, that has what it needs.
Right.
But what's interesting is that
what you're saying is that this is not a tax; it's charity.
It's not a tax, exactly. But what's also interesting is that the Sforno, the 16th century commentator, he says that actually the Torah is specifically contrasting these donations, these trumot, these nedivot lev given for the Mishkan, contrasting it with tzedakah. He says that tzedakah can be taken by force like a tax,
right, and
that these donations are actually in contrast to it and have to be self-motivated.
Right.
Which is interesting, right? So what's the difference? Why is it that tzedakah is something that you have to give and that someone can actually go into your bank account and take it from you, can bring you to court, sue you, and take it from you, a court in Judaism? which is not like the concept of charity that we normally think. But in Judaism, tzedakah is obligatory and is something that can be taken away from you. Why is that not the case for the Mishkan? Why didn't Moshe have the ability, the authority to go to each person and say, listen, we need to build a Mishkan?
Well, later in the Torah, we have the half of shekel that people have to give, and this is mandatory.
That is mandatory. So why is this different? Right?
So I assume you have an answer, not just the question.
I do have an answer. I'm just presenting the question.
Yes.
And so I was thinking about the fact that why is tzedakah obligatory? What's the concept behind tzedakah and tzedek that makes it something that you absolutely have to give? And how is this different? So I think to do that, you have to introduce two very common, very well-known concepts in Judaism called tzedakah, which is literally could refer to social welfare, which is related to the word tzedek, which is social justice. And you have to distinguish that from chesed, which is loving kindness, which is something that you do for somebody, and is not necessarily just saying. So Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, who is Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik's his younger brother, he's a little less well known than Rabbi Soloveitchik, than his brother, but he was not less of a Torah scholar. And he said that tzedek and chesed, that justice and loving kindness, are aimed at different people, different human relationships. Tzedek, social justice, and social welfare, are demanded by the very existence of human dignity. It's an affront to God and to the intrinsic value of human life for someone to be living a life of suffering, of poverty and hunger, without protection from the elements, or without a way to escape crushing debt. And that is why, since it's founded just on our common humanity, since it's just founded on the fact that we share that characteristic of being created in the image of God, it's something that can be demanded of us and has nothing to do with how well we know the person or what we think of that person's personality.
Right.
And so therefore, the Judaism allows the court to go into our bank accounts and take out that money, demand it from us, because just our very existence is what obligates us to give that money. In fact, Rabbi Soloveitchik says that Judaism actually says that there's a lien, a shibud, that is on part of our money. That in a sense, our money, not all of our money belongs to us. Some of it actually belongs to the poor. And if we were not to give tzedakah, if we were not to contribute to social welfare, we are, in a sense, stealing from them.
Right.
In contrast, chesed is something that has to come out of love, out of a personal relationship. It's something that it doesn't make any sense. The examples in the Talmud of chesed are where you are rejoicing with a newly married couple, or where you're comforting the mourners, or where you are, where you're doing things that, visiting the sick, things that require a personal pre-existing relationship. If a random person off the street did these things, it wouldn't really add anything. There wouldn't be any real chesed accomplished. So it requires love. And so I think what this is showing, the fact that these trumot have to come out of nedivut leiv, shows that what God wants the Beit HaMikdash to be built out of a sense of, out of love, out of a personal relationship with God. It's a home that we're sharing together. And so God doesn't want you to give it if you're just giving it out of a sense of obligation or a tax. He wants you to give it out of a sense of love. And I think that this distinction that the Sforno points out between this truma that's given for the Mishkan, which is out of love, and the distinction from tzedek, I think that has a dual lesson, has a lesson in terms of how we're supposed to look at justice and the obligation we have towards other people. And it also has a lesson about how we're supposed to look at our personal relationships with our friends and family and with God, that it has to come out of a deep, personal, voluntary motivation and not out of just a sense of obligation or something that's impersonal.
And this of course raises many questions.
Hey, guys, the rabbi needs the room. I did not see.
I understand that the class is coming in, so
Everybody
we'll
back
end
up.
it here, Rabbi. Thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.